Sterling's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, copy.
Deja vu.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Deja Reviewed podcast, where we talk about the original versions of TV shows that were later rebooted. This is season 1, which we're calling In the Zone, discussing the Twilight Zone. I'm Michael.
And I'm Mark.
And today we're talking about season 1, episode 17, titled The Fever. And The Fever originally aired on January 29th, 1960. It was directed by Robert Florey, written by Rod Serling, starring Rod Serling, Everett Sloane, and Vivi Janis.
There is a fifth dimension.
Both shadow and substance of things and
Suddenly up ahead.
just cross over. You're moving into another dimension.
Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
So here's Rod Serling's opening voiceover from The Fever. Mr. and Mrs. Franklin Gibbs, 3 days and 2 nights, all expenses paid, at a Las Vegas hotel, won by virtue of Mrs. Gibbs' knack with a phrase. But unbeknownst to either Mr. or Mrs. Gibbs is the fact that there's a prize in their package neither expected nor bargained for. In just a moment, one of them will succumb to an illness worse than any virus can produce, a most inoperative, deadly, life-shattering affliction known as the fever.
And the IMDb description just says, a middle-aged man, which middle-aged, that's just very generous, a middle-aged man catches gambling fever from a slot machine that he believes is calling his name, which is pretty much
I would
the whole
think,
episode.
I know people are living longer. Even now, I would say he looks old, and certainly in 1960, I would not have said middle-aged. I would think middle-aged at that point would have been like 40
20
or early 50s or something, or life has not treated him well.
Yeah, he is, he for sure is an old man. He's an old man and an old, let's say, is he in our Mount Rushmore or top 5 of worst protagonists that we've had in the Twilight Zone to this point?
I don't think he's, I don't think he quite reaches the level of the guy from Escape Clause or...
The one with the faces, the 4 of us are dying?
Yeah, the 4 of us are dying, but he's certainly not terribly likable.
So, speaking of him, I don't know if you, I have never seen...
Which is a good thing to do since he's the protagonist.
I have never, forgive me, I know you're a film professor, I've never actually seen Citizen Kane, but Everett Sloane, who played the Franklin Gibbs, played Mr. Bernstein in Citizen Kane.
I did not make that connection.
Well, that's why I'm making it for you. And
well, thanks.
Vivi Janis, who played Flora, his wife, Flora Gibbs, we'll see her in another upcoming Twilight Zone episode, and I think it's coming up relatively quickly. And this director directed Perchance to Dream.
Okay, which that I could see that. There's some stylistic connection there.
Speaking of stylistic, we got another, I know you've been noticing this, another pan down from the Twilight Zone stars to the Vegas Strip at the very beginning.
Yeah, that was my first note. Yeah, so that's been an ongoing theme, and I kind of like it as like a visual motif, particularly with the anthology series, where every episode is not a continuing story; they're sort of standalone. So I like it when they find ways to give a little feel of consistency. Yeah. I actually when it tilted down, I thought it was like a fair or a carnival or something, and then it shows some more. I'm like, oh, that's the Lights of Vegas, which looks suspiciously like a carnival. And it just really struck me how different Vegas is today than at that time. I'm not sure culturally where it would have fit. I think, I have the sense of it more as at least marketed as like a family destination and something for everybody kind of thing now. And my guess back then was it was really much more focused on the gambling, but it really had this old Vegas feel. I mean, compared to now when I remember, even landing at the Vegas airport and you're surrounded by nothingness and you see like the Luxor and these other like giant buildings in the just like dominating the landscape. It's this very bizarre kind of thing, and this did not look like that. This looked like the sort of old school all these casinos crammed together and just people cram full throwing money into slot machines.
That's interesting you say that, because I feel like current Vegas is, I know that they have shows and stuff, but I feel like it is not marketed toward children, because they have those guys, not that those guys are specifically endorsed by Vegas, but the guys on the streets snapping their little porn like hooker cards and trying to give them to you.
I don't know if it is a great family destination, but I feel like even in my lifetime, I remember Vegas used to be the place, just if you were going there, it was to gamble. And then they sort of tried to make it more of the sort of like adult destination with the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And I feel like now at least the marketing I see for it, which you're right, I don't think actually reflects the reality, but is kind of, this just great vacation destination. If you want to see shows, we got that. If you want to gamble, we got that. If you want great restaurants, we got, like, as a destination place, as opposed to it used to be a destination because you wanted to go gamble and that was kind of the only place to do it.
I do like that they
have legal brothels.
I do like that they ran the same grift in the 60s as current Vegas does, where they offer like special guest packages or whatever at the hotel to try and get you to do exactly what Franklin Gibbs did in this episode, which is spend his life savings because he has a free room at this casino.
Which was hilarious because there's like the hotel manager who's like, oh, a very special guest. And, and Flora is like really eating it up. I loved Flora. She was so nice. And I don't know why she stuck with this loser.
She's great. Yeah.
But then the photographer's like very tongue in cheek. The hotel photographer, like, yeah, they're so great to have special guests. He's like, yeah, like we have every other night.
Yeah. That was another great snarky. Serling's getting away with a lot of like fun, snarky lines in the Twilight Zone with some of these kind of more secondary characters.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it made a difference that it wasn't the hotel manager. It's this guy who just shows up for like one scene and like one line to take the photo, can kind of get away with that almost as like a throwaway. And it's something that if they, we're talking in a previous episode about what they would or would not let you air. And I don't think anyone would have stopped them from airing that. But when it's with these secondary characters, you can be a lot looser with what they do, because if you need to cut out that line or even cut out that character, it's easier to do in editing.
I'm impressed that you could tell that the hotel manager and the pit boss and the photographer were actually different people, because they couldn't have picked more generic looking 1960s white slick backed hair, brown haired men.
All in the same dark suit.
Right. They all looked exactly the same to me.
So I wanted to ask, I read the opening voiceover and it says they're there due to Miss Flora Gibbs' turn of a phrase. And that really just raised it's not mentioned again in the episode how they actually won this or what they did. And I don't know if that was something that maybe a 1960s audience would have made a connection with, if there's some sort of regular contest where you send in a clever phrase and you win trips to Vegas, like if that was a thing back then. But I was like waiting for that to be followed up on, or for it to somehow be crucial to the plot that she's really good at turning a phrase or coming up with a clever line. The kind of way where in a movie you would introduce some hobby or something that somebody has in the beginning, and of course at the climax they're going to have to use their hobby.
Well, the only other competition that I remember from around this time was in A Christmas Story, where the wife is able to successfully name Victor, the horse, the cousin's horse of the Lone Ranger or whatever it was. Okay. And they win the leg lamp. So, right? Wasn't that how they won
the
leg
lamp? I thought it was from the dad, like fills out these contest forms and answers. Maybe it was the wife who knew it and he fills out the form.
That's right.
That was like an ongoing thing that they said he was regularly doing these contests, right?
Yes, very much true. Oh, that's true. Victor the horse. Anyhow, that was the only one that I could think of, and that wouldn't really be a turn of the phrase.
While we're still in the opening of the episode, I really liked the opening kind of establishment before we even really get to the Gibbs. We're inside the casino, panning around, showing all this other stuff, a lot of things superimposed over each other, giving this feeling of vibrancy and vividness and, the happening place to be. And it just felt very different than what we've generally seen in Twilight Zone, other than the very end of The Four of Us Are Dying, where they kind of superimposed the faces because they didn't have the morphing technology yet. But this was it wasn't being done to be an effect. It was just kind of play all these images at the same time over each other and kind of make it feel very busy and energetic. And it reminded me a little bit of the opening of Apocalypse Now, not in terms of the tone of it, but just the obviously, but that, that's like an all-time classic beginning that plays with multiple superimpositions and stuff and making you make these mental connections, and had a little bit of that feel to it just stylistically, which I thought was fun, and we hadn't really seen anything like it. And they're playing an opening theme. I know you've always pay attention to the music, so I've been trying to make a point to do that more. And the opening theme wasn't Guys and Dolls, but it was really close to it, like close enough that if I was a lawyer and owned the rights to Guys and Dolls, I would think about suing them.
You're right. Like this was another episode that had, frankly, this was kind of a goofy episode though, but it had that kind of goofy, like, do-do-do-do-do, that I've mentioned a couple
Guys
times.
and Dolls.
Didn't fit in to, I feel like, other episodes. I felt like it kind of fit into this episode because this was just kind of a silly episode, I thought.
It was. I made a note, like, as I always try to predict as we're going on, it's 2:30 or 2:40 in, and I'm like, okay, well, one of them's going to succumb to the fever, which I'm assuming is some kind of gambling addiction, but then this whole episode is just a PSA, like, what's the Twilight Zone element? And we do end up getting the Twilight Zone element, which was also cheesy, but felt really forced in. I mean, it really felt like this wanted to be a PSA that they're like, oh, we got to have some kind of supernatural or crazy something because it's the Twilight. It felt like it just wanted to be a gambling PSA.
Well, and it kind of wasn't even necessarily anything supernatural because, like, so toward the end of it, Mr. Gibbs, his wife wins this trip. He's the worst kind of passive aggressive where he's like, gambling is evil, but this is your vacation, so you enjoy it. And then the second she tries to enjoy it, he's like taking money away out of her hands. He's just a horrible person. But
there's a great in the sense of like what a terrible person he is and a terrible husband. He's like, it's a miserable, terrible waste of time, but of course it's what you wanted.
Right. It's so passive aggressive, and he was just gross. But the whole thing then of course he gets addicted because he wins some guy hands him a silver dollar. He wins once and then gets that's literally what the fever is. And it was interesting, especially as we're now all social distancing and these people were terrible at social distancing. Right in the opening, Serling talks about the fever as a horrible virus. So it was kind of interesting, especially right now as we're both sitting at home hiding from the world, that this virus was just gambling. And so he gets addicted to it though. And then at the final thing, he sees in the most ridiculous looking thing, the machine's like comes up to his room and is like, come Franklin, like he has this ridiculous voice and is trying to get him to gamble more. But his wife doesn't see it. So in theory, it could have just been this guy kind of going crazy. And then of course he falls out a window, which by the way,
seems to happen more and more.
I know. And by the way, that window was the weakest window because he just backs up and leans on the window and the whole thing gives out. And I do know in Vegas,
the window was already open, like it like opened out. And so he leans and it like opens the rest of the way and he could just fall out. But then somehow the glass shatters and all the like wood shatters just from him leaning on it anyway. It was, I mean, the window was like made out of, I don't even want to say paper mache because paper mache would have held up better.
Well, I do know in Vegas that they definitely do not let you open those windows and break out those windows because they don't want people flinging themselves onto the strip. So,
well, maybe they learned that lesson from seeing what Franklin did.
Could be.
You mentioned the social distancing. I do want to note for our listeners, in case any of you are worried about us, thank you for your concern. We always do this socially distanced because we live in different cities. So we just do this over a Google Hangout.
Different states entirely, even.
Yeah. And it's not because we have to. It's just we don't like each other. So we try to stay as far away as possible. But we actually don't have to do any change. I was listening to NPR this morning and they were talking about like broadcasting from home. And if, that there's some, you may hear some kids in the background or something and the audio quality is not quite what it used to be. I'm like, hey, we don't have to adjust to do this socially distanced because usually each of us sitting in a room by ourselves doing it.
Going back to what you mentioned about Flora the wife being a good character, and I agree that she was very nice. Wives in the Twilight Zone are, except for Time Enough at Last, extremely patient with their husbands, and this was no change here. She was extremely patient with Franklin, And then there's one moment where he literally gambles till 8 a.m. and she's gone home, gone to bed, or gone up to the room, gone to bed, comes back down, and she's like, Franklin, he's like, what time is it? She's like, 8 a.m. And he's like, you're bad luck, like, get away from me. He shoves her at one point. Like, he's just a bad dude, and she's pretty patient with him.
Yeah, I think I used in Escape Clause the phrase long-suffering wife, which is sort of a cliche, but we do seem to see a lot of those in the Twilight Zone. And another one where, she seems very pleasant. She's enjoying this trip, getting, you got the sense they were very, down to earth. Probably, I had the sense, even though there's no data specifically saying this, I had the sense they're probably like working class or like lower middle class. Won this trip. She's just enjoying, like, even if it's obvious, like the hotel kind of has people coming in for these contests regularly, she's enjoying the attention. They're going to take a photo of her and stuff. And she just seemed like a really pleasant and like really trying to make the best of everything. And she's stuck with this jackass who is just, miserable. It's not enough for him to be miserable. I don't even know why he came along. She should have brought one of her friends.
Yeah.
But I guess, at this, in 1960, maybe that's weird and, the couple's supposed to go together. But he's just trying to make her miserable. He has this description. He says, we go to Las Vegas. And this is when she wanted to put in one coin to a machine. And I get that. Like, I don't gamble much anyway. And when I go to Vegas, I don't play the slots. But my first time there, I'm like, I'm going to put a coin in a slot and pull the handle because that's just a Vegas thing, cross it off the list.
And hers was just a nickel. Now, I know a nickel in 1960s money was
that would buy you
more.
a railroad at that point. Well, given what's happened with the stock market the past week, maybe a nickel will start being worth it.
Yeah.
But he says, we go to Las Vegas. We waste 3 days and 2 nights. We do it because that is your silly idea of enjoying yourself, and we do it because it's not costing us anything. And this is as he's explaining why she can't spend a nickel. Okay, if you're getting everything else comped, let her spend a freaking nickel.
Exactly.
And I'm trying to think,
how they get
what
you.
would he have been doing with those days that's so valuable otherwise? It's like, we're wasting 3 days and 2 nights. Like, what was he going to be doing at home? Sitting in the dark, like, so he doesn't run up the electric bill, like, doing nothing?
If they're claiming he's middle-aged, maybe working, but there's no way that guy was not of retirement age at this time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's another one, and we've talked about this, and I think, there's a pattern where when we get these really unlikable protagonists or even unlikable secondary characters in some cases, at this point we should know something bad's going to happen to that character because the Twilight Zone is setting us up to not be caring about them and just be interested in the story instead, right? Because if Franklin had been set up as this great guy and they're this loving couple, it's much more traumatic at the end when he, flings himself or falls or however it is to his death. And that's going to be my thing now. If I see an episode and in the beginning somebody's clearly being set up as a total jerk, I'm like, all right, this guy's going to get it at the end of the episode because I think it's smart, but it's kind of becoming a consistent device at this point.
Well, that's interesting too, because we've seen a few episodes in the last few that have been adapted from stories by other people. This is a Serling original, and I do know I've brought this up multiple times. Serling has a very, very strict moral compass, and I say this as a compliment, I think in a good way. And since I mentioned Time Enough at Last, another theme we saw in Time Enough at Last that we see revisited here is basically Time Enough at Last. You did a great job bringing this up. Was about addiction, and this now is a real, I think, addiction. This is a more serious addiction than someone being addicted to reading, which doesn't seem that bad. But that same obsession that we saw in Time Enough at Last, we see this guy fall under the spell of he went from 0 to 60 and from hating gambling to like, I can't get enough. And it was that same feeling that we got from Time Enough at Last. And I think the Serling is putting his stamp of judgment on that one way or another.
Yeah, although in Time Enough at Last, at least, one of the things we talked about was he was addicted, and he was clearly over the top. He couldn't walk out a door without stopping and reading every paper there. But it was kind of, it seemed like a relatively harmless, positive, if you're going to have an addiction,
right,
kind of a positive one to have. And this is clearly negative. There's no redeeming quality about it. And it is interesting that he's portrayed, Franklin is, as somebody who's so opposed to gambling at the beginning. And then, like you said, as soon as he does it once, is like immediately can't stop. I want to push back a little bit on you. You raised the question of whether this was just a hallucination. I had the same question, except there is the thing at the end which is super cheesy and weird. So I'm not praising it, but I'm saying the point where they made that this wasn't just him hallucinating is after he's dead, the slot machine comes out to where he's lying on the street and like spits out a coin at him. which I took to, in the world of the Twilight Zone, I took to be actually happening, not that that was a fantasy.
That was going to be my question, because I assumed that was not actually happening. There are so many weird things.
Except he was already dead, so if it's his hallucination, we're now sharing the hallucination.
True.
I don't know. It really felt like an excuse to put this in the Twilight Zone when Serling really just wanted to make an anti-gambling PSA.
Yeah.
You know, at the beginning when I thought, okay, so one of them's going to get some addiction, how is this not a PSA? My first thought after that was like, all right, maybe somebody will make a deal with the devil for their gambling, because we seem to see deals with the devil coming up with some frequency in the Twilight Zone. But no, it literally is just this slot machine on wheels that follows him around and says, Franklin.
And my problem with that being the thing, that this machine is literally calling to him to continue playing it, there's a way to have made that machine at least kind of look menacing or frightening. It was so silly. Like, it was just so silly looking. And I was like, I wouldn't, when he opens the door to the hotel, after he goes upstairs, and thinks he's done gambling, he opens the door and the machine is literally like walking up to his door, just like and I know this is limitation of 1960s technology. The machine's kind of like wobbling, like someone's clearly like pulling it on like a cart or something, and it looks so silly and so bad that if it was intended to be this frightening moment, it had zero effect.
Yeah, I can't say for sure. I'd have to think back through every other episode, but there've been episodes that I liked, episodes I didn't. This is the first one that I was really at one point laughing at the episode.
Right.
Like, it was just so cheesily done. And even episodes I haven't liked, we've generally been, you know, it's been an issue with the story or something like that, and they've been relatively well done. I totally agree with you. Like, the slot machine itself was so not menacing, and it has even the production design of it has like a light up thing on the front that looks like a smile. It looks like it's like smiling and walking towards him. It's like Jimmy Slot Machine from, you know, a little thing that Vegas would put out targeted at like 5-year-olds trying to get them hooked on gambling, you know?
Right.
I'm Jimmy the Slot Machine. Come have fun in Vegas. Like, that's what it looked like, not like the thing that's torturing him.
If it looked like any sort of automaton or whatever, it looked like the good robot from Lost in Space was the closest that I could think of. The old Lost in Space was the closest thing that I could think of to what this machine looked like. But that was the good robot anyhow, and it was kind of a silly character. It was so bizarre. And this is one of those episodes, I know we've talked about this in the past, if pulling certain episodes from the ones we've seen so far, I'd be like, oh, this is the one to show someone, to tell them what the Twilight Zone is about. This is the first episode that if you pulled it completely out of context and showed it to me and were like, what series do you think this is from? I think the Twilight Zone would be one of my last guesses, because it was so un-Twilight Zone-y.
I mean, in fairness, I would guess the Twilight Zone before I would guess like Simpsons or something, because it's not animated. So it had, you know, and it's black and white. So I'd been like, okay, maybe it's something from the 50s. But yeah,
all right.
But I think that's a good point. I know you like to think of some of the ones like this is one. You know, if you wanted to like hook somebody on the Twilight Zone, show them like this episode. This really gets what the Twilight Zone is. I feel like this is one, if somebody was like watching the Twilight Zone, not only would I tell them not to start with it, I would be like, when you get to that one, just skip it.
Skip it.
Because it's going to lower your opinion.
And speaking of skipping, let's take a quick break and we will be right back to continue our discussion.
All right, we're back, and we're still talking about the Lost in Space-esque slot machine here. And something I wanted to mention with the was the production design. And I was critical of the slot machine because it looks cheesy and not at all menacing, and it's on these sort of not very stable wheels. And you actually notice that earlier in the episode. There's a shot, kind of profile of Franklin and the slot machines on the left side of it, and he's like pulling the lever frantically when his coin got stuck in it. And I'm like miming it here for all the viewers, which there aren't any because we're not even recording the video.
I'm not even watching you right now.
But and the whole slot machine and table is shaking, and I was like, wait, I've been to Vegas, and like the slot machines are like big and heavy and like locked down. They're not loose on a table that you could just like pick it up and carry it away. And he knocks over the whole slot machine. And that just seemed very fake to me. I mean, and I don't know, maybe in 1960 slot machines were different, but I assume they are not on like wheeled tables that you could just like grab one and wheel it out with you. I assume they were bolted down somehow. And then later when the slot machine like shows up at his room, I'm like, okay, I guess they did it that way so they could have this device later. But it just like was compounding one problem with another problem. Let's make it less realistic so we can have this cheesy robot thing come up. And that kind of stood out because the rest of the episode, the production design was quite good. I was impressed with the number of people in the casino. There were a lot of extras. There were there weren't a lot of different locations in here. We're basically just their bedroom, the street at the very end, and then the rest of it is in this one room of the casino. So they didn't need a lot of sets, but that set was filled out. There were people in the foreground, background, everywhere, pulling the slots, people playing roulette, playing craps and stuff. I thought it was really nicely done and filled out, and didn't feel like a little TV set pretending to be a casino, which I've seen in current sitcoms.
I have a different sort of opinion here, and this is leading me to a theory now. So I think, and I'll explain why. What actually happened is Serling was offered a free weekend in Vegas. He got into his suite and he decided to shoot this episode because of it. Because if you notice, when he leaves the casino, first of all, he like opens a door, the casino is closed off by like a door, which looks like a hotel room door, because it has one of those little chains that you can slide into the door to like open it safely. I honestly think that they shot this in like a huge, that the casino, quote unquote casino, was in like a huge Vegas suite that probably Serling was offered, as he just got a free Vegas trip is why he did this whole episode.
I think
that's my theory.
Entirely untrue. I just don't buy it. But I like the.
But did you notice that? Did you notice the door that there was?
I noticed the door when they leave the casino was very not a casino door. So I'm with you on it being some kind of set or something. That would be the largest suite in Vegas to fit all that stuff in, and the production crew and everybody. You can't just like. This isn't like a low budget porn where like, hey, we're going to rent a hotel for a room, a hotel for a night, and get in here and shoot this porno. This is they have the cage.
This is like a high budget porn.
They have all, I don't think there's any way you could do it.
I'm being very tongue in cheek by that, but it was very clear that they were shooting it in like a room. I thought that door was so bizarre.
Yeah, the door was bizarre. I'll give you that. And that stuck out, and I didn't like it. By the way, the porn thing I just mentioned, I have to say that's one of the things I found out in film school. Like, I am not a cinematographer myself. But I found out from talking with other cinematographers that that's apparently a thing that happens somewhere along the way. And someone would be like, well, I got the call last night. It's like the first time you've like made it enough that somebody knows your name to call you, but not enough that you would be doing, that you would only be doing better work. And like get the call like, yeah, we want to hire you to shoot this thing. It's 24 hours. Meet us in this hotel. And then you learn something about yourself, whether you take that job or not.
That's better than we talked about your students doing like PSAs for like Big Oil, right? Didn't we talk about that a few like early on in this series?
Maybe. That seems so long ago. We've been through so much since then, Mike.
You're not so morally bankrupt. In this time of social distancing, people need pornography.
Right. I actually heard on NPR this morning, they were talking about sex workers who like,
oh yeah,
their job requires you to be within 6 feet of people, and that business is drying up.
Not the kind of sex workers I hire. And that's calling back to our very first moment in this episode with those poor porn guys that are standing out there flipping in Vegas, flipping their little cards on their hands to make those sounds. Anyhow,
let's get back on track here.
Are we off track?
Were we ever on track is the real question.
True.
I thought it was interesting just comparing times, how times change. And one of the things that's always interesting to look at is just like the value of money, because that's something that inherent, that has nothing to do with whether it was appropriate in the 1960s or how well the story or anything plays, just like seeing how that changes. And I like that the giant jackpot they had was $10,000.
Right.
And the other one where somebody won the jackpot, not one of our main characters, a secondary character early on wins the jackpot, and it's $1,000. Which, look, I would love to win $1,000. That would be fantastic. But like, if that was like the jackpot, I don't know.
Yeah.
I did look up because I was curious, and like I said, I don't play slots. So I don't really know what the differences are. Apparently, $1,000 is still a reasonable potential jackpot for a penny slot, except most places don't have penny slots anymore. Do you know what the biggest slot machine jackpot ever was? So again, this is not...
You know how good I am at guessing numbers, but let's see
if you can hit the right order of magnitude this time without being off by a factor of like 1 million.
I'm going to say like $10 million.
You are in the right order of magnitude. It's 39.7 million. Obviously, that is not a norm. That's an anomaly as the largest ever.
Sure.
But like $39.7 million was probably the cost of that entire casino in 1960.
Right. Right.
And I did love the woman who won the $1,000, how they brought out like a wicker basket full of cash for the jackpot. And it was all like nicely arranged, like a florist had done it to look like a bouquet, and it was just like sitting in the back waiting for someone to win that jackpot, and then the waitress brings it out and she's like, "Oh, you won the jackpot. It's exciting." It was just so cute.
This casino wasn't super concerned with security, because I also felt like their like cash change window, you could have just very easily reached through the bars and grabbed a whole pile of either coins or chips and just taken off.
Well, how much security do you want them to put into Serling's suite?
That's what I'm saying. A lot, because I like Serling and I think he should be protected. He's a national treasure.
That's fair.
Can I point?
Sorry, just one more thing on that. And you had mentioned the hotel workers, how they all kind of looked the same and had the same hair and suit and everything. I did think it was another marker of the period that everyone was dressing in suits, and it felt very like Rat Pack, old school glamour side of the casino, as opposed to like today where you go and it's like everybody in like Bermuda shorts, Hawaiian shirt, gut hanging out, like, smoking 800 cigarettes. And for a show that we have talked frequently about how much people are smoking in, everyone in the casino was not smoking.
Yes,
which
true.
was weird. Like, because that's one of the few places even today that I feel like you do still see like everyone smoking.
I'm telling you, because there's no smoking allowed in hotel rooms, and they were shooting this in Serling's suite.
There's also no smoking allowed in a rental car, so maybe they were shooting in a rental car.
This is a perfect segue, because I don't know if you've noticed, but Franklin Gibbs, this should have been grounds for divorce for Flora. He tucked his tie into his pants.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Did you notice that?
I did not.
It was horrible. And this is another perfect segue. So a little bit of modern applicability. I can't stand in shows and things like this, and like in Mad Men, Don Draper would always go like get home from work and just like lie down in his button-down shirt and tie and like belt and shoes. When I get home, if I have to be dressed up for a closing or meeting a client or something like that, I am changing out of those clothes as soon as possible to put on some comfortable clothes. And at one point, when Flora's about to go to bed, and Franklin's laying on his bed, fully clothed in his shirt, like button-up shirt, pants, belt, shoes. I was like, kick your shoes off at least, for God's sake.
Well, he's like, I'm having problems going to sleep. Well, maybe you're having problems going to sleep because your shoes are still on and you're still in your dress clothes.
Yes, you're fully clothed for work. Speaking of, I know I just mistakenly call her Paula. I swear, I don't know if you noticed this. When he's about to go back down to the casino, I swear he calls Flora Paula. And since they only had a small amount of shooting because Rod's stay was only for the weekend, I swear to God he calls her Paula at one point, and they left it in there. It left it in there instead of Flora.
I didn't catch that, but honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this guy doesn't even know his wife's name, because that's
a good point.
how much.
Yeah, maybe
of an
it's a
a-hole
character
he is.
choice.
Yeah, he's like, so to the director's like, so I got this idea. What if every time I just say a different name, like I don't even know what her name is? And I'm like, that's great. Do it.
Go for it. Did this remind you, again, speaking of modern applicability, this remind you of the Simpsons episode where Marge gets addicted to gambling and Homer calls the monster that has his hooks in her Gamblor?
No, I forgot about that, but that's a great connection. It's funny because you said, did it remind you of Simpsons? I'm like, yes, and I made a note about the Simpsons it reminded me of, but it's not that one.
Oh, which one does it remind you of?
It was the one where, so it's that scene where they're up in the room and he's fully dressed and he's like, I don't want this tainted money in our room or in my pocket, so I'm putting it back in the machine. And it reminded me of, I think it's a season 1 Simpsons. It's definitely early on when Bart's going to try to skateboard over Springfield Gorge.
Yes.
And Homer's like, I want you to see how dumb this is. And so he does it himself.
Yes, that's right. And he falls into the gorge. And then as they're trying to take him out,
they pull him out, get him in the ambulance. The ambulance drives like 2 feet, hits a rock. The back opens up and he falls back.
Oh, remember when The Simpsons was so good?
That part was that reminded me of I think one of maybe like the 2 or 3 hardest I've ever laughed at a movie was the first time I saw Hot Shots, which that's an old movie at this point, which has not aged well. I saw it more recently, but it was Charlie Sheen when he kind of did a few parodic
comedy
things in a row, yeah. And it's a parody of Top Gun, but there's a scene where the guy like crashes and they like load him in the ambulance and he's like not strapped in. They're like he's like bouncing everywhere. And then the part I love is they get to the hospital, they like get the stretcher out of the back, put it, and his head's like hanging off the end of it, and they like go halfway through the doors, and then they're like stopping to talk about like which way they should go, and the doors just keep like closing and opening on his head.
That's right. You know what movie since we're just doing this, you know what movie that did hold up that I think is kind of like that, and I still love to this day, is Top Secret with Val Kilmer.
Oh,
which is
I haven't seen that since it was out. So
it's still so very funny. It's great. It's great. But I agree. I could see how Hot Shots would not hold up as well. Hot Shots Part 2, though, is still a classic.
Well, I mean, that was should have been an Oscar winner. Well, and while we're on good parodies from that was like, you don't get like parody films the same way. I feel like those come in waves because there was
the Wayans brothers ruined it for everyone.
Well, but they were like the second wave, or I mean, maybe there were earlier waves, but I think of like. It was the Zuckers, and then you had like Hot Shots, you had Airplane, you had the Naked Gun series, and Leslie Nielsen then did a couple of other things. There's like a vampire parody and other stuff, and they basically like played it out, and you kind of didn't have that for a while. And then the Wayans came in, and they started doing their parodies with these scary movies, like little scary movie series. Not that the movies themselves were scary, maybe scary bad.
Yes.
And you had a few other things then that's kind of like died out again. Like I'm trying to think of a recent like parody movie, and that just doesn't seem like a thing. And I wonder if it's that, the whole movie industry, you've seen this sort of bifurcation where those kind of mid-budget movies don't get made as much anymore. And you have like the big tentpole blockbusters or these super low budget indie films. And you kind of really can't do a parody at either of those places. You need like that mid, low budget but studio budget movie to do a parody.
I don't know if this is still, I don't think it's the Wayans brothers, but like Epic Movie, I think there are still some there. I hate to even give any.
Yeah, don't put that in the notes because we don't want people to think we were talking about that.
Actually, go to it. Yeah. But like there are some still, I think they're just very, very bad. And like I do think that they try and catch the.
But even that Epic Movie, that was 13 years ago.
Well, yeah, true. All right, fine. Moving on.
I just looked it up on Wikipedia very quickly. It has one snippet from the New York Times review. It says, "Thankfully, Epic Movie, unlike the movie it sends up, is short."
Okay, back to the Twilight Zone. So when I mentioned it before, when Flora comes down and it's 8 a.m. and it was kind of neat. They have like a couple cuts away as Franklin's gambling, and then it comes back and you see the sun's up behind him.
Mm-hmm. They did some good montage stuff when he was playing too, like fast cuts of like the handle, him sweating.
Yeah.
which I'm sure we'll hit in the sweatiness ratings, the
Right.
wheels spinning, him writing another check, like really, like you get the sort of passage of time, like he's just been down there doing this for hours very nicely. And then when Flora comes down, like fully dressed and the sun is out. Also, there was a window in this casino.
Yes, and there was also a mirror that he looks into. It reminded me of one time, I think this was probably the last time I was in Vegas, and it was a bachelor party. I was probably in my mid-20s, and I was grandfathered in on the $5 blackjack tables. And unlike Franklin, I was on a hot streak, so I didn't want to leave, and so I basically stayed there through dinner, through breakfast the next morning. Ended up having a nice little run in Vegas, so at least I wasn't like this loser. But
So you came out ahead. You did not spend your life savings.
I did come out ahead. I paid for my trip and then a little bit of walking around cash. But I do remember my buddies coming down. They came down. They're like, "Hey, we're going to dinner." I'm like, "No, cool. I'll see you in a bit." And then they came down. They're like, "Hey, we're going to breakfast." I'm like, "Cool. I'll see you in a bit." But I definitely had the fever, but it was because I was winning, not because I was losing.
Was there a slot machine on wheels chasing you around going, Franklin?
I was so tired after I finally I lost a couple hands in a row. I'm like, okay, that's as good a time as any to cut it down. I met my buddies by the pool, and I put my legs in the pool and just laid back on the scalding hot concrete and fell asleep in like a second. So had I hallucinated a slot machine coming and chasing me down, I would not have been surprised.
I'm picturing you waking up like 6 hours just beat red from
Exactly.
this Vegas sun.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, that was a fun trip though. I love you guys.
I have not been to Vegas frequently. The two times I was there, the first time I was a grad student, had no money, so we found like the seediest casino. It had roulette with 50-cent chips, which is how seedy it was. And let me say, all the workers there, from the guy running the table to the bartenders to the waitresses, were all people who I imagine used to work in the nicer casinos, and then as they aged and got less attractive and less having their wits about them, had moved down the casino ladder. Anyhow, so we were playing roulette, which it was my first time there, and I fully expect to lose money when I gamble. Like I view it basically as like entertainment. Like, okay, if I can be entertained for 2 hours for $20, that's like going to see a movie or something, right?
Well, especially if you're playing roulette, I think those are the worst odds in the house.
Well, it is, but the reason I went was like, I don't even want to have to try to use strategy. I want to do, but I'm in Vegas. I want to do the things, because again, I am not a compulsive gambler. I don't particularly enjoy gambling, which is probably why I've only been to Vegas twice, and both times was for other things.
Sex.
Right. I mentioned the legal brothels, right? So I wanted to do like the gambly things. I'm like not just like sit there and pull a lever. Like I did roulette that time. The second time I went, I learned how to play craps, because I'm like, that's the thing you see in movies when they're like, this is glamorous Vegas. I want to just
those are the best odds.
What's going on, right?
Those are the best odds.
Those are the best odds. Although your best odds are to actually bet against the shooter.
Yeah, true.
Which
your best odds are not going to Vegas and invest in an IRA. Those are your best odds.
So anyway, so my first time in Vegas, I'm at this place with the 50-cent chips, and so I put some around, and the very first spin, my number comes up. And it wasn't like on, like I had bet red or black. Like I'd bet a specific number and it comes up, and so the payoff on that's like 36, I think, to 1. And I had like a dollar on it. So I made like $40. I mean, $36, but I'm rounding. But I'd literally been there like 3 minutes. I'm like, well, my plan was I took out $20, and I'm like, this is how much I can afford to lose, because I'm a grad student. I don't have much money. And this $20 should like keep me entertained for a few hours. And then I will have got, my entertainment out of the gambling, and we'll go do something else.
Right.
And it was this weird thing. I'm like, well, I realized the smart thing to do is walk away, but I really wanted to just pay some money for entertainment. And I've literally been here like a minute. And so if I just walk away right now, I feel like I kind of lose. Like I didn't get what I wanted out of it.
Well, and they give you drinks and stuff.
Right.
While
So basically
I
pocketed $20 of it and then just played till I lost the rest of it. And I was back where I started.
That's how you do it. That's right? How I was doing well at blackjack. Cause I'm like, okay, I'm going to set this aside as house money, and whatever I win from there, I'm just going to keep pocketing that, pocketing that until that's all gone. They end up nice and up.
Well, so the second time I went and was playing craps, I also got in a hot streak. I won about $300, which was a lot because we were playing like the cheapest craps table you can find. I think it was like $5 chips. I kept looking for the 50-cent chip crap table, and that apparently does not exist. I think $5 was the minimum one that we found, at least when we were there. Anyway, so I won like $300 and walked away, and that paid for, some of our meals and stuff there.
Right.
And it was fun, because I was winning, and also like it took a while. Like it's like, we were there for probably like 2 or 3 hours to win that much. And which I realized Franklin played much longer. But anyway, so then our church was having like a casino night maybe like a month later. And we're like, oh, we should do craps again. Like we had fun with that one. And we went and literally lost all of our, and it was like fake money, just whatever. We lost all of our chips in like 5 minutes. Like literally did not win a single thing, just put money in, immediately crapped out, put money in, immediately out. And so it was again, they we're like at this church thing, like, well, we spent all our money for casino night in the first 10 minutes. I guess we got another 2 hours.
Yeah. One other thing,
bring us back.
I don't
on
have
track,
a whole
please.
lot. I don't have a whole lot left to say about this episode, but I will say at the very end when he falls out again, I will point out that window was extraordinarily weak. He like it was like when in the one with the astronauts, the one with the astronauts where they come back and they're all disappearing. Anyhow, Clegg, when he broke into the bar.
Yeah. And then the sky was open. When the
sky was open, I think.
Yeah.
And he just like leans on the door and just busts through it.
Right.
Franklin basically leans on the window, like you said, and the window could have just pushed open, but instead it just shatters around him.
Well, no, it pushes open and shatters.
I didn't notice.
No, if you look, it's like on hinges. Like it's opened and shattered.
So he falls out this window, dies. His Flora gasps and all this stuff. A doctor comes up and like puts his stethoscope on him, and he's like, "Well, he's dead." And these cops, there's people like standing right around the doctor and the dead body, and the cops finally like, "Well, nothing left to see here. Go away, everyone. The stretch will be here in a minute." And then everyone just walks away and leaves this dead body lying on the Vegas Strip. It was so bizarre. And then the stupid machine comes up and spits money at him. You're right. But it was very, very bizarre.
I love the doctor because he's clearly been there for a while, because there's been time for the police to show up, the ambulance to get there, this crowd to gather. And the doctor, like, it's not like a paramedic. It's like a doctor that you would have like when you go in for your physical.
Right.
And he like pulls out his stethoscope and like, well, looks like he's gone. Like, yeah, because he fell out of the window and has been laying here with his like neck broken for an hour at this point.
Yeah, we can see his brains oozing out of the back of his head.
I feel like the cop was like, "Hey, is anyone here a doctor?" And some guy's like, "I'm not, but I just won this stethoscope. Maybe I can play it off."
But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express.
Right. Yeah, no, the ending was bizarre, and then the slot machine showing up and rolling him that. I don't know. You mentioned the mirror. I just want to say this is continuing our run of Twilight Zone episodes with some nice mirror shots where we see the slot machine coming into his room like to attack him, and then we look in the mirror and in the mirror you see it coming through the door, and then they cut to floor and then cut back, and now in the mirror you can see the door's closed and there's nothing there. So yeah, continuing to use mirrors to show stuff going on in the background. That's I think that's been like from our first episode, just something that's another kind of Twilight Zone theme that they like to do.
Yeah.
Although he did not run into the mirror, and the slot machine didn't run into the mirror either. So that was a win.
We don't know what you said he was coming to attack him. We don't know what the slot machine's end game was. Like, what was it? What was its purpose?
What if he would have just like gone over to like, all right, what do you want? What would it have done? That's a good question.
Yeah, like was it like maybe the slot machine was a little horn dog. He's like, feed me coins or whatever. It was very weird. This is a very weird episode.
There was an old Garfield comic I remember where he's like being chased by a dog, and he's like, I wonder what a dog would do if you actually let it catch it. And so he stops and turns around like, okay, you caught me. What do you want to do? And the next shot is them slow dancing.
I like that.
I know you're also, in addition to being a lawyer and a comedian and a podcast host, also an actor. Mm-hmm. The drunk guy who gives him the first coin. I am not an actor, but I have directed things and worked with actors. And one of the things that has stuck with me that somebody told me very early on is like, you don't want to play drunk you want to play whatever you're trying to do, and being drunk is like an obstacle to getting it. This
Right.
guy did not get that note. This was like
Yes.
an extra they pulled on, like, okay, you're drunk, action. And he's like, how do I be drunk?
I almost made this note. I didn't really want to rag on the guy, but yeah, what I've always been told is the last thing, if your character is drunk, the last thing you want is for other characters to know that your character is drunk. So you're supposed to be playing like that you're trying to act sober, because that's what drunk people do.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like the Andy Capp, like bubbles coming out of his mouth. So hilariously drunk. And though, once again, I think they just sent someone from Sterling's room down to the casino. They're like, find the drunkest guy you can, get him back up here, and he's going to play the drunk. I'm telling you, the more I think about my theory, the more correct it is that they just shot this in Sterling's suite.
Well, you know, we always have our plans for how we're going to redo these. If we were going to redo this episode, which I don't think we should because I don't like this episode, but we should try to get comped a room in Vegas and just shoot it in the room.
Agreed. Which is exactly, that'll be very method of us, because that's exactly how they did it.
I will play the drunk guy. I'm a method actor, so I will be getting drunk. I also felt bad for the drunk guy because he said he'd been playing that machine for an hour and a half. He gives this guy one coin, walks away, and the machine pays out. And then he comes back and just starts feeding the machine again and doesn't even notice. Well, at first I was like, doesn't he notice that he comes back and the thing's on the jackpot? But it's not. They changed the line on the slot machine in between shots so that he didn't come back and get upset that there was the... I thought that was very nice of the crew, because I'm pretty sure that guy was actually a drunk slot machine gambler and would have been very upset if he walked off for another drink and came back and somebody else had won the jackpot.
So, you know, I thought for a brief moment that there was going to be a really clever thing, because after, like you said, Franklin knocks over the very easily knocks over the slot machine. When they go and pick it up, now the handle has just jammed. When they go and pick it up, one of the pit boss comes and takes a out of order sign and puts it on the machine.
That was just sitting like right there on a table waiting for him to pick it up.
But I thought that actually would have been a neat, and would have made it a little bit more Twilight Zone-y if the thing had been broken the whole time and it maybe just paid out once to get him to use it. But I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was that it broke, and that would have been kind of a neat twist to it. But I'm not going to give credit for this one because I don't think that was the intent.
Yeah, that would have been cool though, kind of like the Zoltar machine in Big, which is
exactly,
you know, where it's like, and when he goes and finds it the second time to get back to being a kid again, and it is plugged in, he like unplugs it to make it work.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a nice little device. Well, I think Penny Marshall was much smarter than whoever directed this episode. I don't have a whole lot else to say on this.
Should we closing narration then, and then get to ratings?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. The closing narration. Mr. Franklin Gibbs, visitor to Las Vegas, who lost his money, his reason, and finally his life to an inanimate metal machine, variously described as a one-armed bandit, a slot machine, or, in Mr. Franklin Gibbs's words, a monster with a will all its own. For our purposes, we'll stick with the latter definition, because we're in the Twilight Zone.
I feel like they're letting the casino off the hook. Like, it was the slot machine, but the casino certainly could have stopped him. I mean, there's the point where the floor manager's over by the money cage and like, boy, when they get hooked, they really get hooked, don't they? Like maybe someone should step in and say, you've had enough.
Yeah. That was also one sentence, by the way. That whole closing narration was one sentence. No, two sentences. I take it back.
Because we're in the Twilight Zone is a second. I guess
That
the
was
second part.
Well,
Yeah. For our
that was a
purposes, we'll stick with the
dash.
latter definition because we're in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's rank this one. Let's
All
get
right.
to the sweat
So
level.
sweatiness this is on a scale of 1 to 10. This one I'm gonna give like a 7 because he gets pretty
Ooh.
sweaty when he gets into they're not sweaty the whole time. So, well, okay, I'm gonna give it a 6 because they're not sweaty
Okay.
the whole time, and it feels justified that he's like has the fever and is in there doing it. But man, he gets pretty sweaty when he's in the montage of pulling the lever and sweating. That's basically what he does. So I'll go with a 6.
I'm fine with a 6. I had a 4 because I felt like it was sort of justifiable sweat, but I'm fine with a 6.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, and then let's rate this thing. I think I have a guess. I this is out of 5. I'm giving this a 1. I just did not think this was a good episode. It was corny, it was cheesy, and it just didn't feel like a Twilight Zone episode. And I feel like we've been we haven't given anything a 1. The closest we've given are 1.5s for What You Need and The Four of Us Are Dying and Escape Clause. And I think that this was worse than all of those.
Well, I appreciate that context because I was thinking 1.5. There were some nice things in the production design and the shooting and editing of it. But when you say those ones that we gave 1.5, yeah, I felt this was this was just a silly, dumb episode.
Yeah, that's
so I think that's
what I kept thinking.
We've been reserving the one for something that really kind of didn't teach us anything, didn't leave us thinking anything.
Yeah,
just wasn't good. And I think that's it. So this is our first one. We would advise you to not watch this episode if you did not watch this episode and listen to this podcast all the way to the end.
That's super weird.
Don't go back and watch the episode.
But you're right. Actually,
I feel like honestly, if I was that person, that would make me go back and when you read a review of something that's like so terrible, you're I gotta see how terrible it is. No, this is not terrible in a fun way. It's just bad.
And it's a good point. Like, you're right that even though this was sort of a PSA that gambling is bad, I didn't think anything about this episode when I was done watching it.
No, I actually right afterwards was like, well, I guess I'll go watch the next episode and write about that because maybe that'll be more interesting.
I was like, I guess I'll go to a casino and gamble away my life savings because I didn't learn a thing.
I have to say one nice thing about this episode because I feel like we've just been belittling it quite deservedly. We've talked in a lot of the episodes about some of the production design stuff and some of the shooting that they've done well, and we rarely talk about the sound. I know you thought it was cheesy, and it is, but it was cheesy in a way that fit with the episode. I liked the sound design of the machine talking that was like this mix of coins rattling and someone saying Franklin, and it was one of the few times in these episodes we've seen thus far where they actually did something creative with the sound design as opposed to just kind of filling in the sounds of what you would expect to hear and laying in some music over it. There's actually some design to it. So
fair enough.
I appreciated that. And then it just got worse after that.
Okay, Mark, are you ready to guess next week's episode?
I am. Like I said, I actually went on and watched the next episode, but before I did, I wrote down what my guess was going to be.
Good. Right, we're all about honesty and Deja Reviewed.
Right? So I can tell you the title because I wrote it down.
Very good. Go for it.
The title of the next episode is The Last Flight. And my guess was going off of having seen And When the Sky Was Opened and Third from the Sun, which both involve some sort of experimental aircraft and like travel between other planets or something weird happens to the aircraft. My guess was that it was going to be another sort of experimental aircraft that we see what happens on its journey, but it like goes off and disappears and the people on the ground never know what happened to it. So kind of like I shot an arrow into the air in the sense of they just like lose it and never find out what happened.
And Mark knows whether he was right or wrong. I don't, because I don't remember this episode, but we will find out soon enough. So thank you all for listening. This was Deja Reviewed. Next week's episode, as Mark just told us, is episode 18 of season 1 of The Twilight Zone, called The Last Flight. Feel free to leave us a rating and a comment wherever you're listening to us, or you can find us at dejareviewed.com, where you can leave us a voicemail or a text message, and we hope you all stay very safe and stay away from each other, and tune in next week.
Deja Reviewed.